Hi everyone, this is Mindy, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how I created this spinner card using the baby mobile. This creates such a unique surprise for the recipient, and I'm first going to show you what this will look like. So when they open it up, that baby mobile will spin. Now, other than our stamps and dies, the only other thing you're going to need is going to be some thread. I'm going to start first by creating my background, and I'm using the cloud background. This is a two-piece stencil, and I'm bringing out some white cardstock that is 4¼ by 5½. I'm going to take one of the layers of the stencil and place that over my cardstock, and then I'm going to ink blend this first layer using Moonstone ink. It is a really, really pale blue, and I'm going to just blend that over the open areas of the stencil using my blending brush. Now, the more pressure you apply to your brush and more ink you pick up, the darker that color is going to be. So once I have that done, I'm going to bring in the second layer. And on these layers, there are the etched designs of the previous stencil. So that is what's going to help you line up your stencil. Now, the best way I found to be able to find these etched lines, because they're very, very faint, is I kind of sat back and looked at it from the side. That allowed me to be able to see those etched lines, and I could line them up so my next set of clouds is in perfect placement. Now this next color I'm going to use is Forget-Me-Not. So it's also another light blue, but just a shade darker than Moonstone. Once again, using my blending brush and going over those open areas of the stencil. Now because there is that kind of dip from the stencil onto the cardstock, you want to make sure you're blending in both directions to get complete coverage. I'm using a magnetic work surface to hold my stencil in place, but you could also just put tape from behind and do that as well. Now, after I removed that stencil, I started coming back in with my blending brush and Moonstone ink to kind of fill in all of that white space, but the Moonstone was just a little bit too light, so I switched over to Forget-Me-Not, but when I picked up the ink, I tapped off on my work surface so I don't come in too harsh. Then after I have that filled in, I'm going to do a lot of splattering. I'm going to start off with the liquid stardust. Now, mine has settled at the bottom there, so you want to make sure to shake this up really well. Then I'm going to just put a couple drops onto my work surface. I'm going to add a couple drops of water. I'll mix that up with a paintbrush and flick this all over the background. A little hard to see on camera, but it is super shimmery and really pretty. The next thing I'm going to splatter is white paint. Now this happens to be the Dr. P.H. Martin's white bleed proof paint, something like that, but any white paint will work. So I just scooped a little bit out with my paintbrush, put some water in there once again, mix that together, and then flicked this all over the background. So now I have these pretty sparkly splatters and also some white splatters. I wanted to add a little bit of contrast to the background, so I took some Blue Jay ink, kind of squished it down on my work surface, a couple drops of water, and now I'm using the same paintbrush that I did before, so you can see where it kind of has that white in there, and I'm totally okay with that because it still is going to provide a nice contrast of splatters to my background. Once my splattering is done, I'm going to set that off on the side to dry and work on the front of my card. To create the window for my spinner, I'm going to be using this arch from the Secret Garden window. So I'm going to place that over some moonstone cardstock cut to 4¼ by 5½, just making sure that the bottom is straight and that my margins are even on each side. Die cut that out and then set that off on the side for a minute. So there was an example or an image on the lawnfawn website where it had this cute little sleeping bear, and I thought that was really adorable. So I brought out the Den Sweet Den stamp set and I found that cute little sleeping bear. I placed that down onto some white cardstock, and I was thinking I'd also use this other one, like it's reaching up towards the mobile. So I'm going to stamp these down in the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. I love using this ink because I know it is alcohol ink friendly, meaning I can use my alcohol markers to color in my images. So I stamped down these bears, and then to do my coloring, I'm going to be using my tri-blend markers. I think these are Spectrum Noir tri-blend markers. I only need 2 markers because there's 3 different colors on each marker. So I picked out the colors that I wanted. I have a little swatch sheet that I like to reference to, and I'm going to just kind of switch between the 2 markers to get the blend that I want. I started out with the darkest color kind of behind the bear's head and towards the bottom. And then I'm going to blend that out with the rest of the colors. Now, I believe I'm using EB 1, 2, and 4. And EB means earth brown is the blend that I'm using. So I colored in both bears using that color combination. And after I filled it in, I came back in with the EB5 and just lightly added a darker shadow area there. And then for the muzzle, I just found a really light tan color out of my tri-blend markers and filled that in. Then I took the coordinating dies, held them down with some low tack tape, and run these through my die cut machine. Now for the baby mobile, you're going to need to die cut this twice because we need to be able to sandwich our thread in between. So I have some white cardstock that I'm just going to trim in half, and I'll be able to die cut 2 of those. And then for the rest of the accessory pieces that come in this die set, we have clouds, a moon, a star, and a bow. And so I'm going to die cut the clouds from some white glitter cardstock, the stars from silver, and then the moon is going to be from some metallic gold cardstock. And my little bow is going to be die cut from Moonstone cardstock to match the rest of my card. Once I have all of my pieces die cut out, I can start working on the assembly. So I picked one of those white die cuts of the baby mobile, and this is going to be the front of my card. Then I'm just using liquid glue to attach all of these pieces. Now you're going to see me kind of dab it off with my finger a lot because I tend to over squeeze my glue. So there was a lot of excess glue on there. I'm also working on a craft sheet. This is really helpful when you're working with liquid glue because my die cut image isn't going to stick to it. So if a little bit of liquid glue seeps out, it's not a big deal. I can just wipe it up later with some rubbing alcohol. I kept all of my die cut pieces very gender neutral because I have so much blue going on in the background. Now that I have that all glued down, I am going to take this really thin, I guess it's like a thread. It's like a silvery thread. Now, I really wanted fishing line because it's clear, but I couldn't find any, and ours is out buried in the garage. So I just had this really pretty silver thread. It's very thin, and we're going to sandwich this between these two die cut pieces. Now, a lot of spinner cards that I've seen, they decorated both sides, but because that would be really hard to do with this, it's not the same front to back. I'm going to just let one side be decorated and the other side be plain. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my liquid glue and I'm going to add dots of this glue all over that bottom piece. I almost forgot I wanted to trim off that topper just a little bit because otherwise it's going to hang too far down. It's going to get caught on my window. So I trimmed that top piece off. Then I cut a piece of that silver thread and I'm going to stretch it right down the middle. So it just barely fits on that topper piece, but it does. And I'm just going to make sure it is all lined up straight down. Now, you might see it a little bit hang through the moon. I'm okay with that. So I'm just going to make sure this is all lined up straight. Then I'm going to take my liquid glue again and add little dots over that thread and just kind of cover in or fill in any areas that I may have missed. I want to make sure that this is held together really well. Then I can take that front piece, my decorated piece, and place this over the top. I have a little bit of wiggle room because I used that liquid glue. So I'm going to take my tweezers and kind of just help pinch everything together so it all lines up perfectly. Once I know I have everything lined up over that image, I'm just going to kind of go through and press down with my finger, make sure that that thread stays straight down the middle, and then I'm going to place something heavy on it and let that sit for a few minutes. While that's drying, I'm going to create my card base. So I have a piece of white cardstock here. This is cut to 8.5 by 5.5, and I'm scoring it at 4.25. So this is going to be a side folding card. So I can go ahead, fold this in, and then just use my bone folder to reinforce that fold. Now I need to create my window from this too, and it's got to match the front panel that I did. So I opened up my card front so that the front of the card is facing me on the right. I brought in my Moonstone cardstock that I die cut that window from and placed that die cut or that arch window there right over it. It kind of fits in like a puzzle. And then I'm using some low tack tape and I'm going to hold that down. And I'm also going to tape down that card front because I didn't want that to shift. I really want this window to be in the exact same place. Just make sure when you're running this through your die cut machine that your card is open or you'll die cut the window all the way through the back. So when you run that through the die cut machine, it may not cut all the way. So I'm taking that die once again, fitting it over the area. It just kind of locks in like a puzzle, and then die cutting that. And there I have my window. And it's going to match up perfectly with the window I created from the Moonstone cardstock. So that cloud panel I did before is going to go in the inside of the card. So I'm going to just take some tape runner, add it to the back, and I'm going to nudge this into the inside of my card, making sure it's flush with that folded edge. Now I can bring in the baby mobile, and I'm going to try and center this in that open area of the card front. Now what I'll do is I already have some tape in my hand. When I have that thread or what I believe is centered, I'm going to place some tape over this. You could use double-sided tape, anything to just kind of tape that down. We're going to be covering that up. Now the bottom portion, I'm going to pull this tight. So that's why I just did one side for right now. I'm going to center that, pull that tight, and tape that down. Then you can see I'm just kind of practicing here to show you what it's going to look like. When you wind that string and let go, it spins, which is just super cool. So I went ahead and I'm trimming off any excess of that thread. And now to attach my Moonstone cardstock with the window, I'm going to line the back of it with some foam tape just to kind of give it some pop and dimension, and then line this up with the window of my card front. To help me line it up, I had just kind of rolled up some tape and taped this shut. That way my card doesn't pop open and I could really get that lined up perfectly. So now I'll kind of wind this up to show you once again how this is looking. You just kind of twirl it or twist it, close that so that the decorated side is facing up. And then when they open it, that is going to spin. So the hardest part is over. The rest is just really decorating. Now, my little bear, I played around with the idea of adding him to the front, but I thought he just looked really cute as a surprise to the inside of the card when they open it because you can't see him through the window. And then plus he looked like he was sleeping on some clouds. Now to decorate the front, I already had this stitched scalloped rectangle frame die cut out of fog cardstock. So I glued that over the front of the card. I found a cute sentiment off of the Elephant Parade stamp set that I wanted to use, and I just decided to do white cardstock for the sentiment. I debated with maybe a dark blue, but I thought white would just kind of be a little softer. But I did try and stamp it in Blue Jay ink. I didn't really care for that, so I decided to just go with good old faithful black ink. So I stamped that sentiment in the black ink, and then I'm going to use the Everyday Sentiments banner die to die cut out the sentiment because I really wanted those flag edges, which normally I keep my edges straight, but for some reason the flags just were going to fit really well. So to get that flag edge on both ends, I ran it through once, and then I came back and lined that flag up with the other end. So now I have these flags on both ends, and then I added that to the front of the card with my foam squares. I really liked how that white sentiment looked, so I went back and I die cut out that stitched scalloped rectangle from white cardstock and just added that over the top. Now I'm going to leave the rest of that inside of the card blank. If I want to write a message, I would write it down below by that baby bear so that they can't see it until they open the card. Now how this works is that when you're ready to send it, you open this up and you spin your baby mobile, have it so that the decorated part is facing forward, and then you would put this inside of your envelope. So I just have a white envelope here that I'm going to slide it into. And when I'm ready to seal my envelope, I like to seal it with washi tape. So there's some really cute new washi tape from Lawnfawn that I would probably add over that flap. So then when they pull this out and they open the card, that baby mobile spins. So super cute. Now you could decorate this in pinks or in rainbow of colors. You could do more scene building behind there. I just really love those clouds and how that baby mobile looks in the center. So I hope you enjoyed today's video and you create a spinner card because they really are a lot of fun and so super cute. Thanks so much for watching.